Peterson, are you sure you're comfortable with me staying here?
I think it could be a good thing for us.
I'm sitting here today with two of the wildest imaginations in Hollywood, Adam Wingard and Simon Barrett. They are the men behind The Guest. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us at ArcLight Hollywood. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Where did your passion for horror come from?
You know, I just feel like those were always the movies that as a kid I really studied enough and watched again and again obsessively enough to start thinking about things like editing and cinematography and how movies were actually made. Films like Reanimator or Evil Dead 2.
For me, I didn't actually get into horror until I was almost in my 20s, because as a kid, I was almost like too affected by it. I would get like too scared. I remember I'd go over to my friend's house and like Alien 3 had just come out. I'd have to like go stand in the hallway and but pretend like I wasn't trying to hide from the movie, you know? It's kind of funny that I ended up becoming a horror filmmaker, because I didn't really get the guts to start watching them until pretty much I was in film school, you know?
What changed?
I think I just stopped being such a wimp, really, you know?
Yeah. When you're making a movie like this that has very stylized elements to it, how do you know when you've hit it? Like, how do you know during edit when you're like, oh, that's it?
I have like Simon and our two producers, Keith Calder and Jess Calder, and we really do work as a strong team. You know, whenever we initially decide to make a film, we basically come up with the story that we want to tell, and then Simon goes off and writes for a few months, and you know, and he doesn't show me anything until he's ready, and then we just have a very short notes process.
After like 6 weeks of working nonstop on the script, I often don't know if it's good or not, because I'm just too attached to the material. And that's when you need a pair of fresh eyes.
And then in the editing, whenever I have a cut that I feel like is pretty close to being there, they can have their own take as a viewer, and then we can discuss it from there. And it just keeps the whole process more honest. You're able to see what works and doesn't.
I just want to make sure that you've got some cash on you. No offense.
I think in general we have a philosophy that anything that can be cut should be cut.
At the end of the day, you're going to be happier, and the movie's going to, it's amazing how much it can change the film and the audience's experience in it.
I'll take them all your guns. If you brought money for all of them. No, I'm going to kill you.
Did you guys get along with Dan Stevens?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be hard not to.
We still
really.
get along with Dan Stevens.
Yeah.
Were you aware of his range when you cast him?
We were hoping.
Yeah, I mean,
The Guest is almost like an experiment in movie likability. The character you like the most is doing terrible things to the other characters.
And it was important to find an actor who just kind of effortlessly put that charisma on screen. The reason why we chose Dan is because he's a gentleman. I mean, he comes from the Downton, you know?
I'm sorry.
No,
Yeah, I mean, that moment got us exactly what we wanted from it, which was a bunch of like British tabloids like posting Downton Abbey and stuff like that. And like, you know, you can't just do a movie with Dan Stevens and not fetishize him like a little bit.
Going into this, like, my only question was like, what is Dan going to be like as a Southerner? I have a lot of pet peeves when I see actors coming, you know, from other countries. It ends up sounding like they saw Gone with the Wind, and Dan, he's very picky about accents as well. Worked really hard at it.
I mean, there's some actors that like don't want to be the bad guy. Dan, I think, also coming off of Downton and other stuff, like really embraced that.
All the insanity of that character, you know?
Yeah, just like 100% commitment.
He always wants to explore the material more, and that's the type of actors I like to work with.
I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't been here.
Really, Mrs. Peterson, it's no problem.
I like to ask everybody, because ArcLight has so many guests in the industry, and maybe some want to be, what do you say to people when they're like, man, these guys have really done something I'd like to do? What do you say to them?
When we first started out, everyone was shooting things on film and whatnot, and you actually kind of had to go to film school to learn how to use that equipment. Nowadays, there's no reason an aspiring filmmaker can't just be a filmmaker. Like, the best way to learn is by just making movies and doing it, and you know, so whenever anyone's like, what advice do you have for an aspiring filmmaker? It's like do you have a camera phone? Mm-hmm. Like, go make a movie.
You should never be discouraged, you know, like, you should be open to evolving as a filmmaker. So don't get discouraged if the first thing that you do doesn't work out or you're not satisfied with it. You know, it's really a process, and you just have to keep learning from your mistakes and just keep going forward. And as long as you're open to that and honest to it, you know, and don't let your ego get involved, you know, the sky's the limit.